Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to week 2 of our poetry exploration. This week we're going to focus on poetry structure and format. We're adhering to standards 137E, which is analyzing the structure of a text and how it contributes to its meaning. 137F, which helps you determine the meaning of words and phrases as they appear on grade level reading. We're also going to interpret figurative language with this standard. And 137K, which asks you to read fictional text on your grade level. The essential question driving this week's assignments and lessons is, what is poetry? And the goals for this lesson are to understand that poems have a unique structure and format. They do not follow typical writing rules. Ultimately, I want you to apply this learning to a piece of poetry that you write. Last week, I asked you to explore various poems using various websites. We had dialogue about what you noticed about the poems. Some poems rhymed, some poems didn't rhyme. Some poems told a story, others were merely emotional. What I want you to look at this week is how a poem's format and structure contributes to the meaning of the poem. Poets often use white space, line breaks, stanza formation. They skip lines. Sometimes they throw in capital or lowercase letters where one would not normally expect them. Some poets use rhyming words, others don't. And some poets use repetition and others don't. I want you to pay attention to all of these ideas this week and apply them to a piece that you're going to write. I'm going to read you a poem by Sandra Cisneros called Abuelito Who. Abuelito who throws coins like rain and asks who loves him, who is dough and feathers, who is a watch and a glass of water, whose hair is made of fur, is too sad to come downstairs today, who tells me in Spanish, you're my diamond, who tells me in English, you are my sky, whose little eyes are string, can't come out to play, sleeps in his little room all night and day, who used to laugh and like the letter K, is sick, is a doorknob tied to a sour stick, is tired, shut the door, doesn't live here anymore, is hiding underneath the bed, who talks to me inside my head, is blankets and spoons and big brown shoes, who snores up and down, up and down, up and down again, is the rain on the room that falls like coins, asking who loves him. Who loves him who? So this is a poet's description of her father, and she gives us an idea about what he is like as well as her feelings towards him. What do you notice about the format or structure of this poem? How many stanzas are there? Do you see line breaks? What is the shape of this poem? Notice that the words is sick stand by themselves in their own line. This is the turning point of the poem. Do you think our author or our poet intentionally does this? Start thinking about why poets place words by themselves and why poets use elements such as white space, line breaks, stanzas, capital or lowercase letters, rhyming words, or repetition. These are all purposeful pieces that poets apply to their writing. So this actually segues into your assignment for this week, where you're being asked to create your own feeling poem. I want you to take some time now to follow the model on the screen and create your own feeling poem. In line 1, name an emotion. In line 2, tell me what that emotion smells like. In line 3, tell me what that emotion tastes like to you. In line 4, tell me what that emotion sounds like to you. In line 5, tell me what the emotion feels like. In line 6, give me a better description of what it feels like. In line 7, yet another description of what that emotion feels like. And in line 8, state that emotion. You can pause the video here and resume when you're done. So once you're done, you might have something that looks like my draft on the right here. I talked about fear, and a lot of you guys know that public speaking for me is my biggest fear. I don't know how I can teach all day, but I do not like public speaking. And this is taken from google.com. I did a poetry search. Line 1 is fear. Line 2, it smells like the skin of burnt marshmallows. It smells like burning hair. It tastes like chalk and Robitussin and vinegar. It sounds like thunder, 1,000 boom away. It feels like numbed, cold fingers. It feels like pressure inside my lungs. It feels like my body's not my body. Make my body disappear. And the last line is fear. So let's talk about some of the things that poets use. White space, line breaks, stanzas, skipped lines, capital lowercase letters, rhyming words, and repetition. And we're going to change the format and structure of our poem from simply what we've created to an actual poem. This is where we have fun. So it's important to know what line breaks are. Well, what are line breaks? Line breaks serve an important purpose in poetry. They are where you want your reader to pause. So you're the poet. Where do you want your reader to pause for effect? They control a poem's sound and meaning. The end of a line signals a pause. It's a short pause when there's no punctuation. It's a longer pause with a comma. And it's the longest pause when there's an end mark, such as a period, question mark, or exclamation. So note that to yourself here. So let's take the poem we created and create some line breaks. Here's an example. Fear smells like, instead of having that entire line, I broke up that line. I broke it into the skin of burnt marshmallows, comma, and like burning hair, comma. Instead of having tastes like on one line, I broke it into chalk and a Robitussin and vinegar, and I ended each line with the word end for repetition. I said sounds like thunder, 1,000 boom away. I broke that one line into 4 different lines. Now there were 3 times when I asked you to write feels like, feels like, feels like. So I broke those into segments as well. Feels like numbed cold fingers, like pressure inside my lungs. Feels like my body's not my body. And then I said make my body disappear. And for effect, I repeated that, make my body disappear. And then the last line is fear. So I took my poem, which was merely 8 lines, and I added some line breaks for effect. And I also added some punctuation. Short when there's a pause is short when there's no punctuation, longer with a comma, and longest with an end mark. So I just threw in where I wanted people to pause as they read my poem. Now, it's time to add some visual flavor to your poems. Visual flavor is where we play with style, size, typeface, and font. The poem that you see on the right side called Street Music is an exemplary example of how this poet played with his flavor. This city, the always noise grinding up from the subways underground, slamming from bus tires and taxi horns and engines and cars and trucks and all vocabularies of clash, flash, screeching hot metal language combinations as planes overhead roar. An orchestra of rolling drums and battle blasts assaulting my ears with the always noise of this city. Street music. Notice how this poet took certain words and spaced them apart when he wanted them to be elongated, and put his words together when he wanted them to be read quickly. A city sounds like music. He put all the elements of a city that he hears and called it street music. So just think of ways that you can enhance your poems by playing with style, size, typeface, or font. And I'm going to apply this now to our fear poem. What if I put chalk in different font and use subscript and superscript for thunder and highlighted the word numbed in bold And for the word stretch, I stretched it out. And I made the word curl, curl. And I made the word disappear in italics, kind of like it's disappearing. And then I put the word fear in bold, chiller font. I changed the way that my poem looks by playing with visual flavor. So my poem went from a very boring 8-line poem to something really creative and fun that looks like this. And that is how you add structure and format to enhance your poems that you create. Because after all, you are the poets. And since poetry doesn't follow any specific paragraph structure or format or punctuation, have fun and enjoy.